Hi, welcome to the Small Shed. Today I want to put forward some suggestions for things you might want to do over the Christmas period. See you in a minute. Now, the decade in the shed that's mentioned in the title it's a new series I want to start doing. It's nothing to do with 10 years. A decade also is a list of 10 things, and I've got a whole load of things that I want to do in the future at random sort of periods, of lists of 10 things, such as 10 things in the shed that are trying to kill you and things like that. This one was one that I'd either got to do now or it's got to wait until next year, so I thought I'd get it out and start the whole series running with this one. Essentially, these aren't things you've got to do over Christmas, but for those who aren't working, and respect to all those who are, and my thoughts are all with you, the carers and first line responders and anybody who has to work over Christmas. But to the rest of us, we get a period of a few days where there is nothing going on, no work to do, and it's very easy to go through that period and come out of it the other side without having actually achieved anything, and you come out into your workspace, shed, makerspace, whatever you've got in the new year, and you feel that you haven't actually achieved anything, and you're probably confronted by a whole heap of rubbish up to the ceiling in there that you left behind at the back end of the previous year. So here are 10 things that I suggest might be something you want to consider. You don't have to do all of them, might want to do one or two of them, but have a think about it and see if it's something that you might want to do over the holiday. Number 1, clean tools. It's surprising over a period of time how much grime gets into all the corners and nooks and crannies of the tools. It's worth just giving them all a wipe down, clean down with a bit of isopropyl alcohol or something, just to clean all the casings up, clean all the flexes and cables, and just generally make them more pleasant to use. Next thing to do, number 2, is to check all your consumables. If you're like me, you've got boxes with sandpapers, drills, saw blades, all sorts of things in them, but you don't necessarily know how many of each and what's running out, and it's only when you come to get your last bit of 180 grit sandpaper for your belt sander or something like that that you find that you haven't got any, or you're down to your last bits and you've got to start ordering it. It's worth just taking a day out or a bit of time just to have a go through the whole situation of grinding discs, cutting discs, and see what you need, get an order made out and get those off, so that when you come back in the new year you've got all the stuff ready to go. Number 3 is the one I'm most guilty of not doing, and that's tidying the workspace, and particularly if you've got a small shed like I have, or a small workspace, the slightest amount of rubbish in here just completely wipes out all the working areas and things like that. So it's worth just spending a day or two just taking all the things, putting them away properly, stuff that shouldn't be in there put away in somewhere else, stuff that shouldn't be in there thrown away perhaps. Just go through methodically, clear the spaces and put the stuff away. Because again, it's the psychological thing when you walk in on January the 1st, 2nd, or whenever, if you're confronted with a nice clean workspace that's all the worktops are empty and ready to go, you're going to feel much better than if you've got to start by just cleaning up before you even get anywhere. Item 4 is to check your tools. In addition to just cleaning them, it's worth going through, when you're cleaning the flexes and that, check that there's no nicks or cuts in them that are exposing wires or likely to expose wires. The little rubber connector that goes into the tool they get damaged and bent and start to decay and fall apart. It's worth just checking that they're all safe. Check your first aid kit, check everything's up to date. Check your fire extinguisher if you've got one in the shed, you should have. There's usually a date on them for servicing. If you do that every year on the same sort of time, same date, you've at least then got that knowledge that when you go to reach for something in a hurry, like a first aid kit or a fire extinguisher, you know that it'll work, or you'll have the relevant bits in there. Fifth item is to sharpen your tools. Again, something I'm terribly bad at. If I get a blunt chisel, I'll tend to go for the next size up or down and use that one. And you carry on like that until you end up with a bag full of bad chisels that are all blunt. And then they start to get used as paint tin openers and all sorts of things. Just take a day off and start to go through all of your tools, drills, planes, chisels, sharpen them all so that again, when you come back in, everything's ready to go. It's something that you very often need to be doing while you're working as well, but you tend not to if you're lazy like me, and therefore it needs that one good push so that everything's back up to speed. Saw blades on circular saws and things like that, you probably won't do it yourself, but it's worth going through and if necessary sending them off to be sharpened or replace them. Bandsaw blades particularly are things that you won't get sharpened, I don't think, but you may well just check them all, run some hardwood through all your saws and things, see if they're burning or whether they're cutting, and if necessary then get them replaced or sharpened. Sixth item is to cull your tools. There's a number of things that I've got that I never use, I'm never likely to use, or they're duplicates. I've got two sets of drill drivers, that's fine. That's something that you still tend to use both sets at various occasions. But I've got two power planers and I very rarely use the one I've got. One of them's 110 volts, which calls into question whether I really need that, whether I need the 110 volt transformer I've got, whether I nowadays have any use for 110 volt task lighting. Nowadays the LED standalone rechargeable lamps are perfectly adequate, so that even if you're outside or anything like that, you don't need 110 volt stuff. The little DeWalt hand screwdriver I've got that I mentioned when I cleaned out my tool bag some months ago, things like that that you just never use. It's time to just think about giving them away to friends, fellow makers, men in sheds, charity shops, sell them on eBay, anything, just to clear them out of the way, because they're just taking up valuable space in the workspace. Item 7 is to set some targets for the year ahead. This isn't a corporate thing, this isn't, you know, getting whiteboards out and putting markers on them. This is just having a think about what you've would like to achieve over the next year, whether it's professionally or just as a maker, because the trouble is things tend to come in at you sideways on and you just immediately run with them. Somebody says, can you do that, and you do it, but you miss the main point, that there are things that you need to get done or you would like to get done that just get pushed further and further back. I've got a couple of men in sheds projects that need doing that will come up in the new year, and I need to think about when those are going to get started. One of them involves getting 300 or 400 pounds worth of oak, and so I need to get that measured up and ready so that the materials are ready to order. Next item, item 8, is to get yourself a project that will teach you, test you, or you'll learn something new from it. It's very easy to just carry on doing what you've always been doing, and I'm always anxious to try and learn new things. This year I got the lathe course, which I wanted, which is teaching me a totally new skill. I'd also like to get and expand on the CNC stroke laser engraving cutting route, which has always sort of held me back because I felt that there's too much computer learning in that, but actually having got that little small laser engraver, I found it's not that difficult. So find something that will test you and start to learn things that you weren't doing before. I'm using the router table much more than I was before. I used to be scared stiff of it. Now I just treat it with respect, but at least having used it, I've now found out how useful it is and how much more it will help other projects. Ninth item is to finish all those little jobs that you didn't quite finish before. If again, if you're like me, you might not be as ill-disciplined as I am. Sort of thing is the clock behind me. You'll notice several videos when it's not there. About 4 weeks ago, the battery packed up on it. I took it off the wall, took the battery out, and then somehow seemed to lose the will to live and didn't do anything with it. There's spare batteries up in the bedroom in the house, and somehow I couldn't seem to manage to get that far. So the thing has sat on a workbench for about 4 weeks, gathering dust, blocking up a workbench, just for the sake of a 10-minute trip upstairs to go and get the battery, sort it out, fix it, set the clock and put it back on the wall. And I've done that now, but it's just that sort of silly little job that makes a huge difference. I've finally got all the vacuum extract cyclone system working in here, and it's working well, but there are different nozzles on all of the machines, and I haven't still quite got that sorted, so I've got to get that done in the new year, because at the moment I'm still using duct tape in certain cases to attach tools to the extract system. And then finally, the 10th item, probably the most important of all if you are a maker and if you're permanently out in the shed or workspace, just have a day off. It is sometimes worth just stepping back for a day and doing something totally different. Read a book, listen to music, go out for a walk, anything, just to clear all the debris from your brain and start again in the new year afresh. I sat down the other day and talked to my wife, and I didn't realise she still didn't work at Woolworths. It's that sort of thing. If you're not careful, you forget all the important things in life because you're that consumed with your workspace. So have a day off. Well, I hope that was of interest. There'll be some more of these Decade in the Shed videos coming up at random points throughout the next year or so. Look forward to seeing you on the next video. See you then. Bye.